Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our September 2015 Treasury Technology Briefing. Today we're going to focus on technology optimization, or getting the most out of what you have today. Our last two webinars focused on how to select and implement new technology solution. These focused on getting the best technology for your needs and being sure to realize the benefits you were looking for from it. Well, what do you do if you already have a system in place and are not realizing the benefits you'd hoped for? This webinar addresses a large number of Treasury departments who want to get more from their existing technology and have no ability to trade it in for a new model. I'm joined today by my colleague Elaine Files.
Good morning.
A few logistics before we start. We'll end in 45 minutes. We welcome questions, but following the webcast, we'll reply off the air to make sure that we keep the session on time. And a copy of the presentation and a recording of it will be available on our website and our new YouTube channel, which I'll reference at the end of the session. The agenda for today will be to explore what technology challenges Treasury departments are struggling with, the concept of optimizing the technology you already have and what options you should consider. Finally, conclusions and best practice recommendations. We'll have several audience participation surveys during the course of this presentation, so be ready to provide your input as we go along. We'll be exploring how you feel about the value you're getting from your Treasury management system and technology in general, what functionality you're lacking in your current setup, and what part of your technology suite requires tuning. First, we'll discuss the technology challenges we find at many Treasury organizations that we engage with. Or, the big question firms ask us is, we spent a fortune on technology to make our lives easier and more efficient. Why am I still using Excel? As I mentioned before, when we talk to firms about how their technology is working for them, the general answer is we get about 60% of what we were hoping for. In our recent Treasury operations survey of 600 companies, more than 80% of the firms indicated that even though they had a TMS, they were still using Excel. And 2/3 of the respondents were looking to improve their infrastructure.
And certainly, as we work with our clients on an ongoing basis, there are specific indicators that a technology assessment is in order. And here are some of the telltale signs that we've listed here. First of all, certainly we see piles and piles of paper. That would indicate that you really haven't let go of the old way of doing things. You know, there's something about the new technology that you or perhaps your auditors even, don't yet trust. Or there's a lot of manual effort to get things done, gathering and consolidating data. There's often a lot of rekeying and manually uploading files. So clearly the efficiency you hoped for hasn't happened. And you still have what we refer to as bus risk. You know, you're in trouble if any one of your staff is out for any reason. Or again, your list of reports includes many that simply transfer information from one Treasury person to another. I recall working with one client who counted 127 different reports that they created within Treasury. When we really looked at them and took out the ones that were just passing a piece of data from one Treasury person to another, we got that number down to 43 reports. So when we see that, that's certainly a sign that that there is some work to be done. Generally, you just don't feel that you enjoy the benefits of automation that you had hoped for when you initially implemented your system.
Okay, so what we're talking about is you feel like you bought a high-performance sedan and it runs like the junker your pal bought for $500 when you were back in high school. It's a shame, the technology is supposed to be a big lever for your organization so that you can get a lot of efficiency. And now what we'll do is we'll explore why some companies haven't realized what they were hoping to get from the technology they'd invested in. Okay, so in a lot of cases, the initial project wasn't completed. Many times you've taken some technology in to replace something that was end of life or something that critically had to get done. So you finished phase 1, but a lot of things that you wanted to achieve were left for phase 2, and you never got to phase 2. Things like some kind of a corporate action or other critical corporate projects overtook your initiatives, and you were never able to get back and complete what you started. Sometimes, we go to firms and they'll say, yeah, sure, we got it done, but we had to adjust the scope. And what happened was they had this grand vision for what they were going to achieve in a certain amount of time, and a variety of factors conspired to stop them from achieving it. So in order to go live and meet their deadlines, they simply cut back on the totality of what they were trying to achieve, and they never got back to it. Functional gaps, these could be bugs, or it could be a scenario like one of our clients where they wanted to have their affiliates input wire transfer requests, and I'll touch on this again later. The problem was that capability wasn't yet available, and now a couple of years later, it's still not available. So they haven't achieved the full level of automation they were hoping to achieve. And finally, flawed planning. And I've seen this take so many different forms. So one of them would be we had a client who needed to get something done in 8 months, and it was easily a 12 to 14-month project. So items just simply couldn't get done and had to be left by the wayside, or it wasn't resourced properly, that sort of thing. So those are some of the reasons, but I think Elaine can touch on some of the lighter issues that cause.
Yeah, Jeff talked about some of the project pitfalls, that may have impacted your implementation. But there are also, some not negative reasons to consider an optimization initiative. There may have been changes in your organization that necessitate changes to your technology. You may have experienced strong growth or geographic expansion, or have, gone through a couple of acquisitions or some kind of other reorganization that really have resulted in new requirements that need to be met. Perhaps you're being proactive and identifying new solutions to things like FBAR or EMER regulation, or tightening up fraud and cyber risk controls. These may not exactly be positive things, but attacking them early is definitely a smart thing to do. And also then you may be in a position to extend usage, either functionally or to new users. You are, now ready to pursue those phase 2 functions, from your initial project that you haven't yet gotten to. Or you're using a SaaS-based TMS, and new functionality is now available that you have not yet deployed just because you haven't had the time.
Thank you, Elaine. One of the overriding themes we hear about why things weren't achieved is that it was a bigger effort than originally anticipated in the team. And when we mention the team, what we mean is everybody involved in a project. There's certain requirements on behalf of the vendor, on behalf of your IT department, on behalf of, having to do your day jobs. And so, making sure that when you move into the optimization part, that you've considered these things is key to success.
All right, now we're ready for our first polling question, which should appear on the screen. There it is. So the first thing we want to ask you is, from your perspective, why aren't you realizing the full value of your Treasury technology solution? And this, by the Treasury technology solution, we mean your TMS and any other Treasury technology tools that you have aggregated to meet your needs. So the options we've listed here, your business requirements or needs have changed, or functionality was de-scoped during the initial project and you never got around to it. New reporting or regulatory requirements need to be met. Incomplete management reporting, or management is asking for additional reporting. Or new functionality is available, but we haven't yet begun using it yet. Or then there's always other. Or our last option here is we have no problems, it's all good. So In the box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, please indicate your answer.
Answers.
Answers, that's right. You can select all that apply. And we'll give a moment. In a recent survey, the recent survey that Jeff mentioned, it was interesting. There was a very small portion of the respondents who noted that they didn't really have any limitations with their system. So there weren't too many that said it's all good. So we'll see if our audience today is of the same opinion. And also, management reporting was one of the hot buttons among the survey respondents. This was, one of the key improvements that people needed to achieve. So, interesting. Okay. As I expected, our lowest was, we have no problems, it's all good. Only 4% of you said that. And most indicated that either business requirements or needs have changed or other. That's probably not surprising either.
Yeah, but you can see that, some folks had all different kinds of reasons. And so this is interesting, and I think we have seen that. If you're not keeping up with your system, business requirements can change, and you may not be staying with them, and so that's something we'll talk about a little later on. Okay, next I'll talk about why firms are considering optimization versus what we're calling the redo. In a lot of cases, we'll be talking to people and they'll say, look, most of the existing system is great. It does our cash. It does our cash very well. It does our forecasting. It does our payments. It does our reconciliation. It does these things very well. And it would be really painful to pull that out just to get some other functionality in place that replicates both that and this other need. So they'll say it's things like some new reporting requirement or some regulatory reporting FBARs when we've mentioned. I was talking to a director of cash management 6 months ago, and she informed me it took her 3 weeks to prepare the FBAR data so that their accounting firm could review it and then give it to the people that actually had to sign off on it. And one of the interesting things to me about FBAR is, all right, so it's just another reporting requirement, but the people that get impacted by it are C-level executives, so it takes on that added level of importance. And then tracking things like debt instruments. So there are, a desire not to pull out what you've got because it's working. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. But you do need to get these other areas covered, and so how do you do that? Then another reason is, a system selection and implementation require a significant amount of budget and a significant amount of time to get in place. And in some cases, it's warranted, and we'll talk about what those cases are. But in other cases, it might be that some sort of a fix or readjustment works. And I've talked to plenty of organizations where they have a perfectly acceptable suite of technology. It's just not deployed correctly. The other one is the team is too busy to rip out what you've got in place and redo it. So it is a lot of effort. In some cases, it's politically unpalatable. A decision was made a few years ago to go with this technology, and everybody signed in blood that it was going to work and be wonderful, and you're not realizing the benefits. So going back to the table and asking to pull it out and do something else doesn't make sense when you could potentially just enhance what you've got. Other projects having a higher priority, this comes up a lot. I can't tell you how many firms we talk to are involved in some kind of an ERP project or have done an acquisition and are involved in that, so there's some sort of a corporate action going on, and they can't get to it. And there's many reasons we can't take the time to talk about today. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of demand that can be accommodated by leveraging your underutilized technology better.
And now we'd like to move to our second polling question. So again, from your perspective, in your current technology setup, where is functionality lacking? And we've listed here, again, select all that apply. It may be in cash management, the basic cash management functions, like reconciliation and cash positioning. Maybe forecasting, debt and investment management, foreign exchange, risk management, hedge accounting, regulatory requirements, or reporting. So select a few of these where you see the greatest need.
Right, and again, reporting is a scenario where, yeah, you might be getting what you need from the system from an accounting point of view or from a basic reporting package, but you find that you're constantly having people manipulate data in Excel or combine it differently so you can do certain management reports or risk reporting or things of that nature. So reporting is a pretty popular one.
Yeah, actually reporting and cash forecasting, I think in our survey were the two most often cited desired improvements. And actually risk management and hedge accounting certainly are typically only found in the most robust offerings. I mean, the Cadillacs and the BMWs. But sometimes even the Rolls-Royce systems struggle to meet those requirements. So it looks like forecasting and reporting, similar to our survey, are the two areas where you would like to see the most improvement.
And then next comes regulatory and risk management. So that is interesting, and forecasting. It's amazing that firms have been trying to forecast for forever, and it's still the #1 item, and it's been the #1 item for many years. So it's interesting to see. Okay. Next, I want to talk about what is optimization. And we've alluded to it. I've talked around it a bit. I want to get right into the meat of the subject now. So first and foremost, we're talking about the phase 2 items that you originally bought the technology to do, and you just simply hadn't gotten the time around to implementing them. So there could be missing functionality either because you intended to get to it and didn't get to it, or it's available now. Some enhancement came out or some upgrade came out, and there's some neat new functionality that you could do and utilize, and you couldn't utilize it the first time around, and so you can now, and it requires some rethinking and reconfiguration. The second one that we like to talk about is your processes have changed. So they've evolved, or they were never working that well to begin with. I have a treasurer friend who his mantra was, I refuse to automate a broken process, and on a regular basis made sure that they weren't automating broken processes. So, and then straight-through processing. Straight-through processing is something where it's really quite amazing that just adding a small tweak here or there, making sure that data is transferred more efficiently between systems, more automatically, can truly make your day go better. And so we find that small changes in STP can have huge changes in operational efficiency. And these would be all different areas this impacts: bank communications, interfacing with internal systems. We're talking with a firm right now where we're getting the payment authorization, authorized payment requests to come through from the ERP into the Treasury management system. And what's wonderful about it is it's automated, there's minimal human interaction, and this is aiding with their thrust for cyber and fraud controls. We got FX execution and settlement, cash positioning, and in cash positioning, that's been around for a long time, but lots of times automating the money movements when you've made the decisions, or automating your cash investments through straight-through processing can really make people's days go much quicker. And then finally, my favorite, which is the bolt-on. So you've got some pretty good technology, but you're looking to really kick it up a notch, and you don't necessarily want to pull out something that works. And so handling things like bank account management, FBAR reporting, fee analysis, these are typical bolt-ons, but it goes further than that. It could be that your existing system just can't handle the hedge accounting, or you don't have the resources to handle it. So you could either interface with a system that does it, bring in a new system, or even bring in some outsourcing that handles it for you. Forecasting's certainly there's a lot of really cool tools out there for forecasting, and you don't necessarily need your TMS or technology in-house to handle it if you need to kick it up a notch and perhaps integrate something in. And I just mentioned the payment request a minute ago. Those are all examples of ways you could add something onto your existing technology suite and get a much better utilization in your Treasury. Okay. I would like to talk about some of the benefits. The concept of optimization is that you're maximizing your existing investment. You know, you're taking the suite of technology you've got and you're extending its use. It's less costly in both time and budget. You can improve your Treasury processes and your operations. So lots of times we wind up involved in optimization projects because we've been engaged to do a best practices review. So we've done an assessment of corporate Treasury operations, and part of the best practices review is that technology could be leveraged better than it is already. So your current requirements could be more effectively met, or things like straight-through processing can really help, as I mentioned before. Better integration with accounting and other internal systems. This is still very, very hot, and one of the reasons is the Treasury departments that we interface with tend to be very proactive on managing cyber and fraud controls right now, and they're taking the lead on it, as Elaine had mentioned earlier. So being sure that you've got a very tight integration where only authorized payment requests come through, and that the accounting postings and everything like that are tied directly in between your accounting system and other Treasury technology is pretty key. And then fully realizing the original goals of automation, so capturing that remaining 40% that you weren't able to realize initially.
All right, then. So we've talked in general about the idea of optimization. We'd like to shift now to talking a little bit more detail about how you actually realize this vision for the future that you have in mind. So technology optimization we see as having three main phases, if you will. The first is doing the review of your current operation and a gap analysis. And at a high level, this is something that you need to take into account best practices as well as your detailed vision of what you want the future to look like. Once you've defined what you want to achieve, you then will develop a roadmap that will get you where you want to go. Looking at the possible solutions, you'll define the route that you will take, and then create a plan to ensure that you get there. And then finally, you'll move on to the execution phase. Here's actually where you will be doing the work, adding new technology or reconfiguring your existing technology. Here's also where managing your resources, your budget and staff are critical, and where leveraging expert help can be important as well. In the next slide, we'll talk in more detail about each of these phases and all of the aspects that you need to be concerned with.
Okay, so we start during the review phase, and what we like to look at is what's not working well today. And, you know, no matter who we work with, one of the first things we do is we go in and we look at where is Excel being used and why is it being used, because that tells you a lot. Then we like to do interviews of the entire operational staff, accounting, and other folks to identify what the time-consuming tasks are, because that, again, indicates areas where perhaps the technology isn't working so well for you. Any rekeying or any manual workarounds fall into that category. And then asking folks, what kinds of questions do you get asked that you can't answer, that you know, your technology is not making it easy for you and you're constantly having to spend time pulling data together from different sources to compile it. And finally, are there any audit findings? Are the auditors concerned about things? We recently got pulled into a project because the auditors said you need to have slightly better controls around this. So so that could be another reason for looking at areas where the technology isn't working as efficiently as possible, because that's something that hopefully you can just push a button and here comes the answer and you can give it to them and the auditors are happy and you can get on doing managing Treasury and the operations of the firm, which is what you're supposed to be doing. The second area is we like to consider new requirements. So the first part was what's not working well, and the second part is sort of future-proofing your decision. What are the best practices? What are you trying to do? Do you have growing risk management requirements? Are there new regulations you have to adhere to? Are there any reporting requirements you're trying to accommodate? And then have you decided to evolve your Treasury operations, creating something? Recently we've been hearing a lot about creating shared service centers or netting or in-house banking. So you may be embarked upon some new initiative that's also not currently covered with your technology and you're looking to add it.
Once you have an idea of what is and isn't working, we recommend creating a strong definition of your desired future state. What do you want to be different or better, and in what specific ways? And the more specific you can be, the more clear your roadmap and project plan can be. You'll need to consider all aspects of each function, the workflow, processes, controls, the interfaces that might be involved, and the reporting that you want to do.
Well, there's some nice hold music there.
Okay, I'll keep going. I hope everyone can hear me. And beyond just a tactical perspective, for instance, minimizing the time required to prepare a cash forecast would be a very tactical focus. But if you look at a strategic vision as well, how will you use that cash forecast? It can be used, to strengthen and improve your liquidity management decisions and capital planning purposes, Then it's very important that you look at prioritizing those objectives, and this will help you to define your scope and project plan. There are quick wins and easy victories to be had, perhaps, or perhaps evaluating potential changes from a cost-benefit perspective is most critical for you, or looking at the value these changes or improvements mean to your organization. Perhaps you have audit findings to address or fraud loss to prevent recurring, or FX exposures to more effectively hedge to minimize the impact on the P&L. For every organization, these priorities will be different. And as a result, your roadmap will look different. There are any number of possible ways, but this is critical so that you can move on to defining potential solutions and then selecting the right route for your Treasury. The right project scope, given budget and staff, the right sequence of tasks in your plan. Just like there are several possible routes to get from point A to point B, it's kind of like we show on the next slide. There are any number of solutions to get you to the future state you've envisioned. Once you've mapped out the possible routes between 2 points on a map, it's like your GPS system will ask you what your priorities are. Do you want to avoid tolls or go the most scenic route or avoid traffic? Once you've told it what your priorities are, it will select the best alternative for you. It's the same way with your technology roadmap. Once we have the assessment complete, you'll begin to develop possible approaches to get there. Jeff will talk about that in a minute. But you can only select the best route by considering your priorities and objectives. Which route will you choose to achieve the quick benefit or control costs or enhance reporting? Whatever the priorities are for your specific environment.
Yeah, Lane, it looks like all roads lead to Treasury Strategies there in Chicago. Okay, so you have options, and we've talked about them to begin with. And so you've got here the concept of, all right, is what we're trying to do going to be a fine-tuning exercise where we're redesigning some processes or maybe applying some integration. So essentially tweaking what you already have in-house. It might be an upgrade. It might be an expansion of use. We're helping roll Treasury system out globally that was being used domestically for quite a while. And then there's the concept of the partial replacement, where part of what you're using isn't working quite right and you do need something additional. So is it a bolt-on? Is it a component swap? Could you improve your bank communications, for instance? Or are there new modules or features available in this technology you have that might be a slight add-on, but are still part of the existing suite that would allow you to get better utilization? Finally, you get to the point where the changes that are required are just so extensive that it really doesn't make sense to continue investing in what you have, and it is time for a redo. So, sometimes when we're going through the optimization exercise, that is the outcome. But in a majority of cases, fine-tuning or partial replacement can really add a lot of value.
So then the next step is to execute your plan. Realization, of the plan is focused on guaranteeing success. So even though you have a great roadmap, there are things you need to do to ensure you realize the benefits. Remember this, in many cases, firms need optimization because the initial project plan failed to achieve its goals. So the overall planning becomes critical here. And managing this type of project is frankly very similar to a full-blown implementation. It's got many of the same steps, and project management is a critical success factor. You've got to manage budgets, resources, task planning, and defining a project governance framework to support the project. The optimization may not have the scope that the original TMS implementation did, but, just the same as the implementation, there will be vendors and banks and project teams to coordinate, project plans to be generated, and users and stakeholders to be communicated with. The execution, again, is the most time-consuming part of the project, but there are many different pieces to tie in here. With new vendors, possible new vendors, or additional work with your existing vendors to do the reconfiguration, or putting in the bolt-ons to realize the full effectiveness of your integrated solution. Two pieces that often are not included in this kind of an upgrade process or a reconfiguration process are full testing and documentation. Both of these steps are critical, particularly given the fact that everything is integrated in a TMS. Every function is integrated and touches other functions. And so making changes to one function can have an impact on other functions that are not necessarily in the direct scope of your upgrade or enhancement project. So full testing is really critical prior to going live.
Yeah, a lot of cases, you're really trying to polish up what you've got, and the testing is where it comes out whether you've got it perfect or not, because these are the final bits that can really add a lot of value to what you're doing. Next, we want to talk a little bit about a concept that it came out of a survey we did. A lot of organizations talked about how their budgeting for Treasury tended to be kind of lumpy. Every 5 years we get to go in for new technology investment. And one of the concepts we're putting out there is plan the tune-ups. Every 12 to 18 months, review the items that we showed earlier. Review, is it still fitting? Do we have a lot of Excel? Are there a lot of people doing workarounds? Are there manual processes? See if there's any gaps in uses. And hopefully, what you find is very small versions of this optimization we're talking about. So you have to do them, but you're doing much, much less. So it's sort of like changing the oil in the car and making sure the air filters are good. You keep getting all of the power from the system and leverage that you're looking for. And the other concept we have here, which I've touched on already, is budgeting annually for this upkeep process. So making sure that you've got it budgeted and you've got it on people's performance programs that they should be spending some time reviewing how all of the technology suite Treasury uses is working and whether there's any improvements that need to come out of it. And that really helps keep your technology investment relevant. Okay, so we have another polling question. So in this question, again, lower right, please answer as many of these as fits. What aspects of your technology are not optimal? Is it that your technology is a lost cause and you need a new system? Choice A. Is it that the Treasury management module needs work? Is it that you think you need a bolt-on? Do you need a bank account management or one of these other things, hedge accounting? Would better bank communications help? Are you finding that the bank communications maybe a few years ago were great, but you want them to be a little bit better? Improved integration with internal systems, and the biggest, of course, is your ERP. Is enhanced reporting or executive dashboards in the area where you're thinking it's not working quite right for you, or is it other?
And I guess I would expect, similar to our last, or one of our last questions, we'll see a lot of reporting and dashboards as desired enhancements.
Yeah, and I'll be intrigued to see how many feel it's a lost cause. Lots of times it's more of an emotional decision than, it's just you've been suffering with something that isn't working and trying to figure out why, and finally throw the towel in. Okay, so it looks like our answers are queuing up. Okay, so enhanced reporting and dashboards.
Indeed.
There it is, and improved integration with internal systems. So that is interesting. I find that one key, very key. And then the concept of the bolt-on is next. So that's good.
All right, then let's move on to our conclusions and just kind of review the kinds of things that we've talked about. So the process that we discussed actually has four steps at this point now. We talked about a continuous improvement process when we add in the tune-up phase. But first of all, we talked about reviewing and doing a gap analysis. What's broken? What's broken, or what could be improved given new technology? And looking at then developing that roadmap of how you want things to look different in the future. A roadmap that includes both tactical and strategic objectives, and that covers all of the workflows, interfaces, required reporting. Cash forecasting sounds like is a good one.
Right, and the other thing to recognize is you can't boil the ocean. All right, there's going to be a lot of areas where improvements could be had, but the reality is you're only going to be able to tackle a couple of the big rocks. So you're going to focus on biggest bang for your buck and the low-hanging fruit, if that makes sense.
Right.
And there are going to be some things you have to leave by the side of the road, but if you can do it intelligently, you can note those, and it can be something that perhaps you address next year, or it could be on a longer-term plan, or at least everybody knows that you're aware of it and that it's not something you're going to address right now.
And that's where defining your priorities and really being direct and deliberate about defining what's most important to you, that's going to help you to decide what to do now and what to wait to do in your next go-around. Execution, the things, certainly execution, budgeting enough is critical. While, you may decide to do an optimization because the full budget of a complete re-implementation, selecting a new system and implementing it, is out of reach at this point in time. It still will require budget to put any enhancements into place or fixes into place. So make sure that you budget enough.
And, on this one, this is an area where you could say it's really the first three, but in a lot of situations where you haven't gotten the technology to do what you wanted it to do in the first place, sometimes it is because in the execution phase, things just didn't work out the way you wanted them to. I think in our last webinar, Mark Riebenstorff of Motorola said you have to be prepared for the hurdles. And when the hurdles come along, you have to be nimble and you have to have a good way to move around them. So the execution phase is pretty key. Having a good vision for where you're trying to go helps keep things on track as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the tune-up. So the tune-up is, as I mentioned just before, is where you aren't just saying this is a one-and-done scenario. Yes, it could be a major initiative to get something done right now if you're a little bit out of date, but if you just stay with it every 12 to 18 months, maybe every 24 months, but if you have a concept of keeping your technology relevant, that's where you can maximize the value of your investment.
And things will change. Your organization will change. It's not necessarily that you need to fix things on an ongoing basis. The nature and scope of your business may change. The geographic scope changes, and the technology available changes. So building into your ongoing routine a regular assessment process is critical, and then you start the circle all over again.
Okay. Recapping the benefits, a lot of firms like the concept of the optimization because it's lower cost, and of course you're maximizing value of what you've already invested in. It's less strain on your team and usually a much shorter time frame. As we mentioned a little earlier, it's an easier sell because really what you're saying is we've found a way to get more from what we already have, and so we're really just maximizing our return on investment. And then capturing the unrealized value that is inherent in the technology suite that you've got. And it's wonderful to know that, there's all of this capability there, and it's really just a reconfiguration that can get you access to it. Okay, finally, and I jokingly say, you should consider professional help. In a lot of cases, firms are very comfortable with the processes they have, and it's helpful to have a third-party perspective to understand what the possibilities are out there. And then also, what are the potholes and speed traps, as we have in here? Where are the gotchas? Sometimes, most treasuries are running very lean, and I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. So having some supplemental staff to help is a good idea, especially as you get into the configuration testing phases. And then leveraging experience. So, making sure that you've got the gaps identified correctly and the plan laid out and with a best practices assessment. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times these projects or the concept of doing an optimization comes out of a best practice operational review. And then knowing when optimization is viable or when it's a lost cause and it's time to throw in the towel and go with something completely different. So, and finally, time to value. So these are all reasons that firms have considered getting external help. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. As I mentioned, this will be available on our website at treasurystrategies.com and on our YouTube channel, which it's been up for a couple of months now. It's got a huge following, and all of our various webinars and online information is available there as well. So thank you very much, and we hope you found this useful.
Thank you.